Hi, everyone. Welcome to this live stream, Ace Your Next Job interview, hosted by Grow with Google. Grow with Google helps people grow their skills, careers, and businesses by offering free digital skills training and tools. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Anna, and I'm an instructor here at Grow with Google. I'm so excited that you're here with us today. Today, we're going to discuss a few practical strategies you can use to excel at job interviews. I'll give you concrete steps that you can take to feel confident and prepared, communicate clearly, and present your best self to a potential employer. In this workshop, I'm working with my co-instructor, Basim. Later, I'll pass it off to him to answer some of your questions live at the end of today's workshop. If you have questions that you'd like him to answer, be sure to use the Q&A section below the video player by clicking the blue button that says Ask a Question. We'll choose the top voted questions to make sure to upvote your favorites. If we don't get to answer all of your posted questions, our team will reply directly in the Q&A section shortly after the virtual event concludes. We also encourage you to use the chat feature for any comments you might have, and also to engage with the other attendees who are watching the workshop. This chat will be available to those who opt in and can be found directly to the right of the video player on your screen. And if you'd like to access the additional resources for this class, check out the resources section below the video player on the right-hand side. This includes a copy of today's presentation. You'll also be able to access a replay of this virtual event by clicking on demand on the Grow with Google on-air homepage. Also, don't forget to post and share on social using the hashtag Grow with Google. Finally, you have the option to turn on YouTube's closed captioning to follow along. To do so, click the closed captioning button directly on the video player on your screen. Now, let's get started. If the words job interview make you feel a little nervous, you're definitely not alone. But it's important to remember that an interview is more than a hurdle between you and your next job. An interview is a chance to speak with and potentially learn from someone in a field that interests you. It's an opportunity to hear directly from someone about what it's like to work in this field, to discover how their team functions and how their company does business. A great interview can benefit your career whether or not you land the job, because it allows you to make new contact. So even if one position isn't quite the perfect fit, it can lead you to another one that will be. Plus, you'll be able to meet people who might become mentors or who can introduce you to someone else who will have that perfect role. It's also important to remember that acing your interview isn't actually about getting everything perfect. The best interviews are about connecting with your interviewers and making it clear how much you have to offer their team. The best way to connect is to relax and be fully present during the interview itself. In this workshop, you'll learn several ways to accomplish that goal. During this workshop, we're going to discuss steps that you can take to make sure that you start your next interview feeling really confident and ready to connect. To do that, we've divided up this presentation into three major sections. Prepare, where we'll walk you through the steps you'll need to get yourself ready for your interview. Practice, where you'll learn about an exciting new tool that will help you to practice interviewing, as well as tips for doing mock interviews with a friend. And be present, where you'll learn tips to keep yourself calm, cool, and collected during the interview so you can clearly communicate the value that you bring to a new job, team, or company. First, let's talk about preparing for your interview. The more thorough your preparation, the more relaxed and present you can be during your actual interview. In this section, you'll learn how to research the company, figure out what questions you're likely to be asked, craft a concise elevator pitch to introduce yourself, prepare questions for your interviewer, and make sure you're physically and mentally ready for your interview. The first and maybe the most important thing you can do to prepare for an interview is research. Your research will help you to make an informed and compelling case for how you can contribute to the company and why they should hire you. This slide shows a diagram with 5 ways to research a job: company website, social media, professional networking sites, news articles, and friends, family, social networks. As you research, take notes about what you learn so you can refer to them before your interview. Start with the company's official website. Read over as much of the site as possible, focusing especially on the company's mission and values. What are they seeking to accomplish in the world, and how can you contribute to that mission? If you can, read about the people you're interviewing with or the department where you're planning to interview, and check for recent news or announcements. Next, check the company's social media accounts and see how they manage their public image online. How do they connect with their users? Are there any social or philanthropic issues that the company supports? Then find the company on professional networking sites. Some sites even have anonymous employee reviews, so you can get an inside perspective on what it's like to work there. Some of these sites, like Glassdoor, will even have information from people who have interviewed for jobs at the company, including sample interview questions. Professional networking sites like LinkedIn can also be a great place to search for more details about the hiring manager or other people that you know you will be interviewing with. Seeing their work history and background may help you find connections or understand their areas of expertise so you can better anticipate their questions. Search for recent news articles about the company. These can give you a sense of challenges that the company is facing and how its actions are impacting the greater community. See whether anyone in your friends, family, or social network is able to introduce you to someone who works at the company or in a related field. Then you can reach out to this person and request an informational interview in which you can ask them questions about their experience working for the company or in the field. Being able to speak to the company's goals will show a prospective employer that you're truly interested in the company and in performing well in the job. It will also give you a deeper connection with your potential employer and make sure that your values and strengths align with the company's missions and values. There are two common styles of interview questions that you should be prepared for: behavioral and situational. Behavioral is when an interviewer asks you how you handled a situation in the past from your work history or experience. For example, tell me about a time when you overcame an obstacle. Situational is when an interviewer asks you about a hypothetical situation in the future. For example, if you are a new lead on the project, how would you get yourself and your new team set up for success? We will talk more about the best way to answer these types of questions. Because behavioral questions focus on a past experience, you want to include plenty of details and data to support your answer. You can try preparing answers that include these four areas: situation, task, action, and results. Sometimes this is referred to as STAR. Be prepared to describe the situation, the task you were directly responsible for, the action you took, and then the results that you achieved with as much detail as possible. Instead of saying something like, I increased sales, it would be better to say, I increased sales by 20% this year, by reaching and converting new leads. Let's dig into our previous example of a situational question. If you are a new lead on a project, how would you get yourself and your new team set up for success? It's important to answer this question with specific examples of actions you would take. For example, I would first want to determine what our key objectives are and how we're measuring success. I would then clarify our resources, determine roles and responsibilities, and then set important milestones to reach our goal. It can also be useful to again think about examples from your past where you encountered similar situations. In my last role, I set my team up for success by making sure we all had daily and weekly goals to track progress. Make sure to show your potential employer how the two situations are related and how what you learned from your previous situation gives you better insight and experience for this hypothetical situation. Something like, the goals wouldn't be the same at this company, but the process for establishing and reporting on them would be the same. I've learned that the team is more engaged when everyone can provide input on the goals and when we track them in a place where everyone can see. In addition to practicing behavioral and situational interview questions, you can also find other sample interview questions online that are specific to the type of job you're applying for. For example, if you search the web for data analyst interview questions, hundreds of results will come up. Even if the job you're applying to is less common, give it a try. If you're having trouble getting results for the job you want, experiment with different search terms or search for interview questions within the industry that you're interested in. There are also commonly asked interview questions that aren't specific to any particular field, which employers use to get a sense of who you are and how you might approach your work. These are questions like, what is your greatest strength and biggest area for improvement? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why are you leaving your current job? How do you deal with stressful situations? And do you prefer working on your own or with a team? Once you have an idea of the questions you might be asked, you have the advantage of being able to practice your answers. We'll talk more about that in the practice section of the workshop. But for now, let's talk about how to handle one of the most common and most surprisingly difficult interview questions out there. Tell me about yourself. While it's not technically a question, this prompt is often the first thing a potential employer asks you. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to answer it right now out loud, the way you would in an interview. Don't think about it too hard, just do your best. Tell me about yourself. It's not always easy to mention the most relevant details when you're asked such a broad question. That's why we're going to spend a little time talking about your elevator pitch, which is a quick summary of what you have to offer. The term elevator pitch comes from the idea that if someone stepped into an elevator with you, you could introduce yourself and give an idea of what you have to offer before the elevator arrived at its destination. An elevator pitch allows you to introduce yourself and what you have to offer early in the interview. You can lead with the information you're proudest of and that will be most interesting to the employer. Here are a few tips for a successful elevator pitch. You don't need to memorize it verbatim, but you should practice and become familiar with the main points to make sure that you share the information that's most important to you. It should be around 30 to 60 seconds long. Your pitch should include these three components: who you are, what you do, and why they should hire you. Now that you're prepared to answer your interviewer's questions, make sure you've prepared a few questions of your own. Asking questions during an interview is really important. It's a way to demonstrate that you've invested time learning about the company and the job opening, and it shows that you're approaching the job thoughtfully. While you don't want to overwhelm your employer with too many questions, it's good to have at least 3 in mind or written down before you start the interview. You might think of more questions organically over the course of the interview, but having a few prepared will ensure that you're able to show that you're approaching the job thoughtfully. If your research doesn't lead you to think of questions, here are a few options for you. What does growth look like within this company? What qualities does your ideal candidate have? What's your favorite thing about working here? What do you see as the biggest challenge for someone in this position? How do you measure success for this position? As you write your questions, avoid ones that can be easily answered by a careful reading of the job description or other basic research. Asking a question that's already been answered for you can make it seem like you didn't prepare enough for the interview. Now that we've covered how to prepare your questions, let's talk about a few ways you can prepare your physical self for the interview. Remember, every decision you make early on in the process is a decision that you don't have to focus on in the hours and minutes leading up to your interview. Decide what you want to wear. If you can, do a little research about the company dress code. It's probably better to be slightly overdressed than underdressed for your interview. Choose an outfit and styling that makes you feel comfortable and confident, and make sure the clothes you choose are clean and in great condition well before your interview. This advice also applies if you'll be interviewing remotely. What you wear matters, and issues like wrinkled clothing may be even more apparent on camera. Prepare mentally by reading over your resume several times so that you know it backwards and forwards. You may want to print out a copy to keep with you during the interview itself. If your interview will take place online, you'll need to prepare the space where you'll take the video call. Choose the most private, quiet space available. Take care that your background isn't too busy or distracting. Make sure it doesn't reveal anything personal that you might not want to share. Having an unmade bed behind you might make your presentation memorable, but it won't necessarily give the impression you're hoping for. If you need to take your interview from a private space, such as a bedroom, be sure to learn in advance how to blur your background. Finally, be sure to let other people know who share your space when your presentation will take place and ask them for support, like childcare, if you need it. Remember to turn your phone's ringer off and take steps to limit any other potential distractions. Interviewing is a skill. Like any other skill, the more you practice, the better you become. Mock interviews allow you to practice answering questions smoothly and make a great impression on your interviewer. In this section, we'll cover the things you should prepare to make the most out of your mock interview. I'll show you how to answer questions clearly and effectively, give you tips for holding your mock interviews, and tell you about a new Google tool that uses machine learning to practice interviewing on your own. One of the most helpful ways to practice your interviewing skills is to hold a mock interview. It might feel a little odd at first, but having a friend, coworker, or family member stand in for your interviewer will allow you to prepare your answers and notice where your interview skills may need some polishing. Ask someone whose opinion you trust to join you for a mock interview. In return, you can switch roles and interview them if they need the practice. Doing a mock interview virtually can help you to get ahead of any technical problems and notice whether you need to make any adjustments to your setup. Whether your mock interview is in person or remote, you'll also get feedback on the clarity and effectiveness of your answers. If your interview will be held online, find out what video conferencing app or software your interviewer will use so you can practice on that exact one. Before your mock interview, prepare answers to questions you'll likely be asked. Look through the job description for clues about the qualities you need to embody to be hired for that job. This slide includes an example of a job listing with keywords you might want to highlight, like relationship building, communication, and success metrics. Once you have a list of the qualities your interviewer will most likely be looking for, think of ways to demonstrate that you possess those skills. Think about times you've shown those skills or qualities in your career and go through your resume to remind yourself of times you demonstrated those qualities. You'll want to work those into the conversation during your interview. Whenever possible, use specific examples during your interview. Specificity is powerful. Sharing a brief story or experience about yourself is more impactful than simply telling someone you possess certain qualities. For example, if you're asked about sales skills, it's better to say, I sold an average of 5 widgets per day, which was the most on my team, than to say, I'm great at sales. Remember, it's important that the interviewer gets a full picture of you and your capabilities, so don't hold back in talking about what you've accomplished. Let them know you're a good fit for the job by sharing your experiences. You can revisit the STAR approach we touched on when we introduced behavioral interview questions. Think of 2 to 3 accomplishments and practice describing the situation, making clear what tasks you were directly responsible for, providing details about the actions you took, and including tangible results. Google has created a free online tool that can help you to prepare to make your best impression during interviews, whether or not you have someone to do mock interviews with. Here's a video about the interview warm-up tool.
There are more than 1.3 million job openings in the US in fast-growing, high-paying fields like IT support, UX design, project management, and data analytics. So Google started the Career Certificate program. But one thing the learners had a hard time with was interviewing. So we tried to think, could we use technology to build a tool to help you practice for a job interview? Interview warm-up is very easy to use. You're presented with spoken questions, and then we transcribe what you're saying and analyze your answers, showing where you repeat a word or where it's useful to use key terms. The goal is to create the safe space where you could practice as many times as you like.
A great fit for this role. I landed a job as a technology manager with the NFL. And we say the sky's the limit, but honestly, at this point, it's a whole different stratosphere.
The right side of this slide shows 3 sample questions from Interview Warm-Up Tool. What are you looking for in your next job? What are your career goals for the next 5 years? And when do you try to push through and solve a problem on your own? And when do you involve others on your team? There are specially designed practice questions for the fields of data analytics, e-commerce, IT support, project management, and UX design. Or you can just select general interview to practice for another field. To try this tool on your own, visit grow.google/certificates/interview-warmup. Now you know how to prepare and practice for your interview. Those steps are important because they will support you in being centered and focused on your conversation with your interviewer. Instead of being distracted by your technical setup or worrying about what to say, you'll be able to give all your attention to the person or people conducting the interview. Being fully present will allow you to show up as your best self. In this section, we'll talk about a few ways to do that. Whether it's in person or online, the minutes leading up to your interview can sometimes produce a lot of anxiety. People have lots of different reactions to a job interview, particularly for a job they really want to land. Maybe your adrenaline starts pumping or your mouth goes dry. Whatever your reaction is, take a moment to notice and acknowledge it without passing judgment on yourself. Take a breath. Since you put time and energy into your preparation and practice, you will be ready. In the minutes before your interview, take the time to remind yourself about 2 or 3 things you want to make sure your interviewers know by the end of the interview. If you're doing your interview remotely, you can have those things written on a sticky note nearby. Just make sure you don't look at it too frequently during the interview. Here are a few examples of things you might want your interviewers to come away with. I'm enthusiastic. I'm detail-oriented. I doubled sales for my team last year. I care deeply about the issue this nonprofit works on. I'm a team player. I have a great work ethic. I'm a people person and I embrace tough problems. If you notice yourself losing focus or feeling overwhelmed, take a moment to really see the people in front of you. Refocus your attention on the people you're speaking with. Getting curious about the people you're talking to, about the position, and about the company can be a great way to stop yourself from overthinking or getting too nervous. Your curiosity can help you connect with your interviewers. Remember, they're not the only ones trying to determine whether you're a good fit for the job. You are also trying to decide whether you want to work with them. Remember to periodically take moments to breathe throughout your interview. A deep breath is always available to you if you need to calm down, gather your thoughts, or center yourself. You can mute yourself if you don't want your interviewer to hear you taking deep breaths during the interview. Here are a few other things to consider to help you to relax during your interview. Interviewers want you to do great. Nothing makes them happier than meeting someone who's great for a role. If this role isn't for you, the next one might be. Now you have a connection at a company that interests you. Think of the interview as a time to celebrate the things you've accomplished in your career and meet people who may be able to help you to take your career to the next level. We've made it through prepare, practice, and be present. Now let's take a few moments to go through some questions that come up for many people who are getting ready to interview for a new job. Job searchers often wonder how to handle interview questions about breaks in their employment. If at any point in your career you've taken more than a few months off, you'll have a gap in your resume. Resume gaps are far more common than you might think. Many people have extended periods of unemployment. Others have taken time off to raise children, care for a family member, or for any number of personal reasons. Sometimes you'll have a break in employment because of a layoff during an economic downturn. A gap in your resume is no reason to avoid applying for a job. Just be prepared to discuss it with the recruiter or hiring manager. If you spent your time away from work doing any volunteer work, taking classes, or gaining other valuable skills, go ahead and mention those in your resume. If your resume gap is for a more sensitive reason, like being out of work for an extended period of time or taking care of a health issue, practice sharing that information in a smooth, neutral way. You don't have to reveal too much. You can also be proactive and simply explain your resume gap in your job application or a cover letter. If you're new to the workforce, you may not have had a lot of job history to discuss in your interview. That's okay. Everybody had a first job, which they had to get without any official work experience. If you've been called into an interview, your potential employer has already seen your resume, so they'll know your background. In order to help the conversation flow, think about relevant experiences you can share in your interview. Volunteer work, internships, schoolwork, extracurriculars, or other valuable personal experiences. Depending on the job, you might even bring up family situations that taught you things you might apply to the job. For example, if you're applying for a job to help run an after school program, you could talk about babysitting your siblings and cousins. If you're applying for a job in sales or marketing, you can talk about your experience doing sales for a school or charity fundraiser. Even if you don't have any experiences that relate directly to the job you're applying for, you can talk about when and why you became interested in that job or field. If you don't have prior work experience to discuss in an interview, remember that your life experience has led you to apply for this job and has given you some knowledge that you can bring to the workforce. Let's fast forward a few steps. Your preparation and practice gave you the confidence to complete your job interview and make a great impression. Congratulations. Now, let's talk about the steps that you can take to make that impression last and hopefully earn a job offer. The image on this slide shows a thank you email. A thank you note is one extra chance to leave a positive impression on your interviewer and hiring team. So be sure to send a thank you note via email within 24 hours to everyone you spoke with, the hiring manager, the recruiter, and any other team members. Your thank you note or email should be brief, no more than 4 or 5 sentences. In your email, be sure to thank the person for taking the time to interview you. Emphasize how enthusiastic you are about the job. Be specific about what you like about the position and what you're excited to potentially contribute to their team. If you can, mention one specific thing you enjoyed speaking to them about. Even if you had a conversation about your favorite sports team or restaurant, those moments of connection can pave the way for a professional relationship. Be sure to proofread your note carefully and complete a spelling and grammar check. Today, we discussed the ways you can give an interview that leaves a great impression with a potential employer. We discussed the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and be present. During the prepare stage, you do your research, then prep your physical space, equipment, and self. In practice, you rehearse out loud and get feedback from someone you trust or from the interview warm-up tool. Finally, to be present, you focus on the main things you want to get across in your interview. You breathe to center yourself, and you use curiosity to connect with your interviewers. I hope that you'll be able to approach your future interviews with confidence and even find ways to enjoy them as learning opportunities and as chances to grow your career. In addition to potentially helping you get a new job, interviews can also be a great opportunity to meet new people and learn more about an industry that interests you. If you'd like to learn more skills you can apply to your career or job search, Google has training resources that you can access remotely. There are many different learning paths and options, so we'll talk about these tools and determine which ones make the most sense for you right now. If you enjoy video lessons, subscribe to the Grow with Google YouTube channel at youtube.com/growwithgoogle. The channel publishes a new video every Thursday covering topics that can help you to grow your skills, career, or business. If you're looking to start a new career and land a competitively paid job or build skills to grow in your career, check out Google Career Certificates. Google Career Certificates can give you a path to in-demand jobs with top employers that are currently hiring. You can earn a certificate and prepare for a new career in a high-growth field in under 6 months, even if you don't have relevant experience. Learn at your own pace and complete the online program on your own terms. Certificates are available for IT support, project management, UX design, data analytics, and digital marketing and e-commerce. Get started at grow.google/certificates. Also, U.S. businesses can get up to 500 scholarships each to Google Career Certificates to train their employees. These scholarships are worth up to $100,000 in workforce training per American company. Here's the fine print. U.S. businesses are eligible to receive up to 500 scholarships for Google Career Certificates on Coursera, valid through December 18th, 2024. Eligibility and number of licenses granted subject to application, business verification, and approval by Coursera. Businesses can apply at grow.google/certificates for business. Grow with Google is an initiative to help people prepare for work, find jobs, and grow their business. Job seekers can grow their skills in order to find new jobs and advance their careers. Teachers can learn how to put the latest technology to work inside and outside of the classroom. Small business owners can build their online presence and find new customers. Startups can learn how to get their ideas the exposure they need to succeed, and developers can sharpen their current skills and master new ones. To learn more, visit google.com/grow. This wraps up the presentation portion of today's workshop. Now give us just a few moments to pass it off to Basim, who will answer some of the questions you submitted.
Thanks, Anna. Hey, everyone. I'm Basim, and I'm excited to answer a few of the questions that you've asked throughout today's session. And as usual, we've actually received quite a few of them. Remember, if we don't get to answering your question, we'll actually be going back and then answering all of them on the Growth Google on their page below the virtual event shortly after it concludes. All right, so let's get on to our first question. It is from Billy. And Billy wants to know, how do I avoid the nerves when going into an interview? That is a great question, Billy. And really, it's all about preparation, right? So grab a friend, a family member to ask you some of the common questions you get in interviews so that you'll feel prepared for anything you might be asked. Next, you want to then try to avoid stuff that's going to make you nervous during the interview process, like drinking too much caffeine. Like maybe you were tired and you drink too much caffeine, that'll make you jittery. And also try things like exercise, maybe some yoga before the interview, so that you've got a sense of calmness before that happens, and before the interview, and you'll be able to be more focused. Or even try things like, regardless of whether it's a virtual interview or even in person, things like the power stance before that interview really just helps you to get focused, build that confidence before going in. All right, so next question here is from David. David wants to know how to answer questions on weaknesses. And so that's a great question, David. And really, it's something that you can spin in your favor. Like, people think of weaknesses as a bad thing, but if you approach it the right way and spin it in your favor, you can always introduce your weaknesses as areas that I am currently working on improving, right? And then list out that plan of action and how you're actually going to improve that weakness. And then if you go about it that way, regardless, you always will make it sound like that weakness is actually a strength that you're currently building. All right, next question here is from Donna. And Donna wants to know, when a question comes up such as, why did you leave your last job? What are some red flags that signal to the interviewer that the job candidate's answer is not fit to continue on the next stage for the interview process? And then so that's another great question, Donna. And then so the thing you want to do mainly is you want to always avoid any answers that include speaking negatively about your past company. You want to remember that your new potential employer will look at your behavior in relation to how you might have behaved with your past employers, right? And so the last thing you want to do is hire someone that's had negative things to say about their past company, and then maybe if they leave their company, has negative things to say about their company. Also, you want to avoid situations where you discuss conflict that could be misconstrued as you simply not wanting to collaborate or work with others in your previous jobs. All right, next question here is from Marvin. Marvin wants to know, what's the best way to receive feedback after an interview? And it's a good question, Marvin. And you can usually solicit feedback via email, right? That's a really easy way to do that, solicit feedback via email. One thing you want to do is keep it short and sweet. So one question, and you can always use different questions if you find that you're not finding traction on multiple interviews. You can either use the same question or multiple questions. just to really kind of get a feel overall around where some areas of improvement. If you don't have access to their email address, you can always find that contact via LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great place to find people, contact, reach out, and get that question answered. All right, next question here is from Olivia. Olivia wants to know, what's the best way to remember good examples of times that I've done XYZ when those come up in behavioral interview questions? So great question, Olivia. In behavioral interviews, oftentimes the interviewer will ask for a very specific situation, example from like your work experience. In the moment, it can be really difficult to remember your best examples. So to really prep for this, you want to keep a running list of all of these good examples in something like a Google Doc, right? So then prior to an interview, you want to practice explaining these situations out loud, right? And then they'll be fresh in your memory. This is also something you can do with a family member or a friend. Next question here is from Nicole. Nicole wants to know, when is the CFAS method used and when is the STAR method used? So we're talking about CFAS and STAR. They're very similar approaches to behavioral interview questions. So CFAS, it's typically used to answer a hypothetical situation, like something that you've actually haven't been in before, to highlight how you would approach that situation. As opposed to STAR, it is used more when you've actually been in that situation, and you can discuss the actions you took and the actual results that came about of those actions. All right, next question here is from Al. Al wants to know, how can you justify you have transferable skills, meaning you can do other things, not just the activities directly in your previous roles? So hey, Al, right? It's not about justifying the skills you have. It's really about sharing what you actually bring to the table, and you want to share that with confidence, right? So ultimately, it's up to the interviewer to decide whether or not you bring more to the table than the other candidates. So your transferable skills may actually outshine one prospect, but another prospect may have more desirable skills for that particular role. So sell yourself, and just let them know what you bring to the table. Next question here is from Sane. Sane wants to know how to address career gap while talking. Great question, Sane. This is a really popular question we get. And really, addressing the career gap is as simple as explaining what you were doing during this gap in your resume, right? It's really, you could be, maybe you were laid off and having a hard time finding a job. Maybe you're helping a loved one. Maybe you were traveling the world. Whatever it is, it's really important to, number one, have this kind of rehearsed and prepared. So this might be a question that might come up. What is my explanation? Don't wait until someone asks you that question in an interview. And the other thing is, you want to be completely 100% honest. You are sitting in front of a person who sees you as a potential fit for their company. A career gap is not going to be the deal breaker for you in this situation. Just explain what it was, why you had the gap, whether it was good or bad. But the key is you want to be prepared, concise, and with a well-rehearsed answer. All right, last question here is from Stephen. Stephen wants to know how to answer the question about expected salary. If you apply for like the junior position, should I say the lowest one? So good question, Stephen. One of the things to note, salary shouldn't really be a topic of discussion during the interview, as the salary should have already been included with the original job post. With that said, if salary does become part of the discussion, you should never undersell yourself, right? So really understand what you're worth and always ask for that. And then from there, you can negotiate salary from that point. But never undersell yourself, always go in, but it really shouldn't be part of that discussion. All right, so this wraps up the Q&A portion for today. Thank you all for joining us for Ace Your Job, your next job interview. Hopefully everyone learned something new. You can find all of your follow-up resources on the same page you're watching in the resources tab below the video player. You can also access a recording of today's session by clicking on demand at g.co/growonair. We'll also be sending a follow-up email with a survey for you to fill out regarding your experience in the virtual workshop today. It's really important to get feedback so we can quickly improve these sessions and offer content that is most helpful to you and other learners. Thanks again for joining us for Grow with Google today, and we will see you next time.